Let's review the SV550 80mm APO refractor. Welcome to SASpro. So SV Boney sent me the SV550 along with the flattener for it. This is just for review. I got to send it back, so it's just a lender. But I will say that I really enjoyed shooting with it. Most of my past experience has been with Narrowband on doublets, and being able to use a little 80mm APO, it was just a joy to shoot with. So let's get into unboxing. We'll take a deeper dive at the actual image metrics as well, some of the final images I ended up getting with it. I'll have links in the description below as well if this is a telescope you're looking to purchase here, especially with the holidays coming up. So if you do decide to grab yourself one, be sure to use my link in the description too. So I have here the SV550 APO triplet and the reducer for it. So let's get them unboxed and check them out. So I'm going to have to rotate this in the tube rings here. As a Vixen style dovetail, 2.5-inch focuser. There's no rotatable focuser. It's locked in place. Plenty of graduations on the focuser itself. A really nice retractable dew shield. You can really feel the tension inside there, holding it in place really nicely. And then there's the objective, triplet APO. Nice little compact little 80mm here. Also looking down the focuser, you can see all the baffles inside there, which is really great to minimize scattered light inside the optical tube. And the 1X flattener, it has T-threads on the back and some very wide threads here that are going to screw directly onto the focuser itself. Now, in order to get the flattener on, you are going to have to take this back piece off, and you will need a very tiny Allen key to get in there to unscrew these. But once you have them loosened, this should come right off. And the reducer should thread right on. There we go. I'm also going to be installing the SV550 broadband filter, and it may not be very obvious where to actually install it on the flattener. The back where the T-threads are unscrews, and it reveals 2-inch female threads right here. So now our filter is on. We can install it back into the flattener. And now just to get my whole camera setup attached. Well, I got Big Red swapped out for the 80mm APO. Don't pay no attention to the cable management. I just pretty much took the cable spine off the newt and smushed it on here. But we got the APO, we got the reducer flattener. It's coming down to my off-axis guider, filter wheel, rotator, camera. So we should have a good test. I'm going to do the Pleiades. I figure that's good. Nice bright stars, plenty of blue, which is always a challenge for refractors. I'll just have to manually align it. I don't have any kind of automatic focusing. So pretty excited. Looks like it's going to be a nice clear sky tonight. So we should be up and running. I used the Batonov mask to help with the focusing, and looking at my filters, they're all almost exactly parfocal, so I was able to just do the one focus and run the sequence of LRGB throughout the night. That way, if any temperature changes or drift from the scope changing size due to temperature changes, that would affect all the images the same across the channels, and it wouldn't leave one channel biased over the other. The other thing I will say is the focuser doesn't drift at all. So I left it set up for a number of days. I was imaging over multiple nights, and I would just check it again the following evening, and it would be spot on. I may have to tweak the focuser just a little bit due to a temperature change, but the focuser was rock solid the entire time. One thing I really want you to look at quick is the flat that I took. So this refractor with the corrector on there is very well corrected. This is the flat. It is really flat. even if we do an auto stretch on it, you could see that it's mostly filter interference than actual flatness of the light itself. Because from one end to the other, in the dark corner, we got a 0.35, and right in the center is a 0.37. So there is very little drop off in the light. And looking at the histogram here, you can see how tight the light actually is. There's very little drop off near the edges. So it is really well corrected and flat as far as luminance is concerned across the entire sensor. Now for the Pleiades test, I had 48 exposures each of LRGB. The luminance were 120 seconds and the RGB all were 180 seconds. And I will say the Pleiades were the only ones I noticed I had some internal reflection from somewhere, from a bright star. I didn't notice that in anything else, so I wasn't quite sure where that was coming from, but I did have that internal reflection in there. One thing we could do is look at the PSF spread between the blue and the red channels, right? This is going to be like your extreme end, especially the blue. It's always hard with refractors and are always bloated unless you have a really nice APO. And I have the blue up here on the top and the red here on the bottom. So the blue had a half flux radius median of about 3.5, and then the red had right at 3. So within a half a pixel difference of the spread of the half flux radius. So that's really good. Especially in the Pleiades, where all these stars are blue anyways and are going to be larger in the blue spectrum since there are a lot of blue stars. You would expect the half flux radius to be a little bigger in the blues than the reds anyways to make the stars blue, right? Another thing we could do is look at image peaker and look at all the corners in the blue channel especially. And there's a little bit of radial distortion, but I think that's mostly to my spacing to the corrector than anything. I was probably a millimeter or two off. So that's really nice to see the stars like this. The other thing we need to look at is see how astrometrically flat the refractor is with the corrector. And it looks like at the extreme corners we're about 9-ish arc seconds of distortion. But the vast majority of the imaging circle here is right at or under 1 arc second of distortion. So there's a huge portion of the imaging field that is really well corrected spatially. So there's a big chunk of this image that could be used really well for astrometry. The other fun one we could really do is a focal plane analysis. And here I have my full width half max heat map, an orientation map, and an eccentricity map. So the full width half max, this is in micrometers, right, at actual size on the sensor. And in this particular image, because I was 4.8 micrometers, and you can see that means that along the very edge we have probably the largest stars, which makes sense. But even that on average is, less than a full width half max of 3. And then you get some really low areas in here, which is around 10 micrometers, which is, kind of in that 2-ish pixel full width half max. So really well corrected across the whole thing. I'm not seeing like a big blob of really high full width half max or something weird. And then same with the orientation. This is the direction the distortion of the stars is pointing. And if you were really far or really close away from the corrector, or the corrector was doing something weird, you'd see a big like color wheel effect in here as all the orientations change across the image around in a circle. And that's also a thing we're not really seeing here. So the correction on the stars is at least well corrected, all kind of in the same general direction, and you can see it's pretty much all 0. So that's really good. And then same with the eccentricity. Again, in the center has very low eccentricity, and around the edges probably has the most eccentricity, corresponding with the bigger full width half max. But again, it's not crazy large, and it is directly in line with what we had seen in the image peaker corners. So here's just the raw RGB combination. You can see it had a bit of a light gradient in the data. So running ABE took care of that beautifully. And we can zoom right on in. And again, this is just linear display stretched image. So not color calibrated or anything yet. And this is just doing a quick color calibration and a statistical stretch. I didn't do any aberration correction or denoising or sharpening or anything like that. What I really wanted to show are some of these stars here of different colors. There's no big blue halo or bloating around any of these objects. We got some nice red stars, we got some brighter stars, even stars of different colors right next to each other. So as far as correction goes, it looks like the APO refractor is doing a really good job having the focus point the same on all of them. And especially this is the Pleiades. This is probably worst case scenario for trying to image through a refractor because of how blue and bright these stars are. Now actually processing the Pleiades, this is what I ended up with here. I think this is just a gorgeous example of what this telescope is capable of doing. We even have some really nice red stars off to the side and all this beautiful blue throughout here. And we can zoom right up in here, 1:1 pixel scale, and you could really just see the detail and all the gorgeousness of the Pleiades here, just in RGB. But I didn't stop at the Pleiades. I did have a couple more nights here, so let's look at some of the other data really quick. The next target I did was NGC 1333, and really the area surrounding it. And I got right at about 90 exposures each, so 4.5 hours each of RG&B, and then 3 hours of luminance. And I'm going to jump right to the end conclusion here. What an amazing area to image. I'm in like a Bortle 6 to 7, depending on where in the sky you're looking, right? And this captured just a whole bunch of this dark, dusty nebulosity, which I was really not anticipating it going to be able to get so much. But we have NGC 13333 over here to the left, and then just a bunch of nebulosity out throughout the entire region here. I did have to stretch it a little bit harder, maybe than I would have wanted to really get the dark nebulosity, but I went for it. So just amazing, just an amazing capture here. And I think really with how flat the flats were and how easily it is to correct for that, it really helps get in detail all the way across the sensor here. And then I also wanted to get some narrowband data too, right? It's always good to try these with narrowband data as well. I did hydrogen and oxygen on the tadpole region. I did, looks like 10 hours of hydrogen and almost 10 hours of oxygen. And I do want to show you what one 15-minute hydrogen exposure looked like through the SV550. And it's not calibrated, right? I got amp glow over there. It's not flat corrected, but just look how nice this is. This is a single exposure. Really great little telescope here. Now let's look at the finished product here for this image. And this is what I ended up with doing final processing of the tadpoles here. You got the tadpoles here, really nice. Oxygen down in there, the dark structure throughout it, and just a bunch of hydrogen all around this whole area. So really cool target. If you've never done the tadpoles before, highly recommend it. It's pretty good framing, especially for the 80mm. I think we're hitting a pretty nice sweet spot for telescope size and a lot of these common targets that you're going to want to image without having to do weird things like mosaics and stuff yet. So I hope this helps some of you out there if you're in the market for an 80mm class refractor or wanting to upgrade some of your astrophotography equipment. If you're from a C-Star or Dwarf or something, you're wanting to make the leap to a bigger rig, I think this is a perfect jumping off point for you. The stars are well controlled. The focuser is solid. Spatially, it's pretty darn flat, so it could be used for like some astrometry, especially if you're right in the middle of your image. And then optically, the flats are really flat, so the corrector does a really great job of making a nice flat illumination field. Again, I'll have links in the description below. If you are in the market and you want to purchase something like this, be sure to use my link. As always, comment, like, and subscribe.